Dateline London, Thursday, 29 May. In this week's UK comedy update, Christ, I guess there's a lot we need to get to. We saw His Britannic Majesty King Charles III give a land acknowledgement in Canada. And just, my God, there aren't enough hours in all the news roundups in all the world to properly unwrap all the layers in that onion of irony. So let's table King Chuck the Cuck for the time being and check in with our good friend Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer, as we seem to do pretty much every week lately, because he always seems to have pretty disastrous weeks that provide fairly ample fodder for comedy shows just like the one you're currently watching. And as bad as last week was for our man Sir Keir, this week was rather markedly worse, it has to be said. And you know why? Because it looks like Sir Keir and the stormtroopers have now lost the services of their most faithful fellow travelers, the fake news media. The woke BBC has turned on the government in about 2 seconds this week after the news, which you heard first on last week's roundup, that Sir Keir has fallen on his proverbial sword and given a big old mea culpa or an ussa culpa, whatever the hell it was, whatever the case may be, about how maybe open borders and mass migration weren't the absolute best thing in the world, and maybe it has wrecked our culture to a large degree, and maybe it hasn't really produced any of the wondrous economic benefits that we said it would. And you can just imagine how this statement went over down at BBC HQ, since if there's anything that we know about the world, it's that the Beeb is the most maniacally left-wing globalist broadcast outlet in the history of the Western world, or frankly any other world for that matter. I mean, these guys make freaking NPR sound like the Barry Goldwater network. BGN, if you will. Would this reporter pay $10 a month for BGN? Yeah, by God, you bet your ass I would. But that's not important now. The important thing is that the Beeb is very, very upset indeed that the Labour Prime Minister has spoken in contravention of the open borders religion, which, when you combine it with climate change fanaticism, is way the hell closer to a de facto state religion than the Church of England is. In fact, speaking of that, did you hear that the Archbishop of Canterbury retired a few months ago, and they just haven't replaced him? Do they plan on replacing him at some point? Unclear. But it's a remarkable snapshot, I think, of the extent to which the citadel of the British state religion is no longer Canterbury Cathedral, but rather BBC headquarters. If the chairman of the BBC retired, do you think they would let the office stand vacant for nearly half a year? Yeah, me either. If the Prime Minister said the Church of England is bullshit and Anne Boleyn wasn't all that great and we should have just stayed freaking Catholic, would the BBC give one single damn? We know the Archbishop of Canterbury wouldn't complain because, first of all, he doesn't exist, and even if he did, he would probably be off blessing a gay marriage somewhere. And I know it's a difficult thing for Americans to grasp, but you have to bear in mind, over there the church and the broadcaster are both organs of the central government. You have to buy a television license each year to finance the operations of the BBC, which is basically, as a practical matter, paying your tithing fee to the actual state religion. But as for our friend Sir Keir, whom we may not have to call Prime Minister all that much longer, as it was, even with the Beeb still on his side, his polling numbers were pretty firmly down the commode, but now that he's on the Beeb's bad side, and it might be fascinating to see if them turning on him even does anything to move the needle of public opinion, and maybe it won't. Maybe he and the Labour Party have made the calculation that nobody takes the state-run fake news media seriously anymore, and their granting of approval or opprobrium doesn't really mean anything because everybody knows they're just making an entertainment product, like a less classy, less erudite version of pro wrestling. But rest assured, Mr. and Mrs. America, our London bureau is on this story like sunscreen on an Irish tourist in the Caribbean, and we will keep you apprised of any new developments.